Welcome back to the discussion, Meeting Government's Data Security Mission, sponsored by GovPlace and VMware on Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com. My guests today are Donald Poorman, Manager Solutions Architecture GovPlace, Jace McCarty, Staff Technical Marketing Architect VMware, and I'm your moderator, John Gilroy. It's hard to observe all the time it takes to provision storage in an enterprise environment. You're talking about 4 months before the break. However, it is time-consuming and heavy on human interaction as well. Does automating provisioning reduce operator error as well, Jace?
Does it reduce operator error? I don't know if it necessarily reduces operator error in a traditional sense, but I think it gives us a unique opportunity to be more standardized, right? And what I mean by that is in my career, and I was a customer before coming to another vendor, and then now at VMware for about 2 years. In that time, it was, we would go and we would grow storage, we would add different arrays from different manufacturers and whatnot, and we would always, with the best intentions, decide, well, we'll do things this way now, we'll do things this way now, and that type of thing. And as a result, it got to a point where we weren't necessarily standardized across the board. And with VMware SPBM, storage policy-based management, specifically how we manage vSAN, it really gives us an opportunity to better control as a whole, even though very, very granularly, the policies that we decide to assign to workloads, right? So we're probably not going to run into any particular misconfiguration as far as data placement, that type of thing, because we're assigning everything based on policy. The system will check for the health of objects and compliance status and things like that. So I don't really think there's any in the way of traditional sense, way of misconfiguring. Now, if someone chooses an incorrect policy, that's one thing, and that's kind of why I went down that route. But the fact that we can, and I think of it especially from a government perspective, and I spent some time in the Air National Guard and communications, as well as working for a very large credit bureau. In the process of doing that, we always had to have, I would say, specifically reporting, whether it be Sarbanes-Oxley compliance or, other types of compliance, whether it be STIG compliance, things like that. And really being able to control a policy as well as being able to report on that policy gives us the capability of ensuring that we meet the requirements of either the workload or a compliance requirement or whatnot.
So, Donald, what are your views on automating?
Well, I think automation is critical for making the whole process more efficient. I don't think you'll ever eliminate the chance of human error being a possibility in anything as long as people are still involved. But I think the key thought there with what Jace just said is the idea of standardization. I think many, many organizations and enterprises have been at the behest of bolt-on technology and bolt-on mentality as it relates to everything being a one-off. And over time, that becomes unsustainable, obviously. So I think the idea of automation brings to bear this concept of forcing standardization back into the operations. So while its impact on human error may be somewhat marginal, it will have a large impact on the overall efficiency on how a data center is operated and how quickly, like you mentioned at the break, how quickly workloads can be delivered to end consumers.
Yeah, quite important. Jay, systems that have more than one type of hardware may require extensive cross-training that's time-consuming. Also, getting a bird's-eye view of system information may not be possible with different types of hardware. Mm-hmm. What options does vSAN provide for federal users to see what's going on?
Well, I think at the time when I was a customer, both in the civilian sector as well as in the military, and every time we would, let's say, migrate from one particular storage platform to another storage platform, we always had to relearn the element management. We didn't necessarily know all the different places to look for data that we were accustomed to gathering, that type of thing. With vSAN, we do present all of this information from the vSphere web client. Now, with that being said, it's important also to understand that when it comes to managing the overall environment, whereas before I would have to do some, let's say, provisioning within the web client, and then also from a storage perspective, I would have to go into whatever element management platform I've got, whether it be any of the traditional storage vendors out there. By presenting everything from within the vSphere web client, It gives us a really easy, uniform place not only to handle procuring and deployment on the platform, but we also report metrics specific to the performance, latencies, and other pieces specific to any application. Yeah. So it's a single one-stop shop, especially when it comes to vSAN, for looking at not only the provisioning, the deployment, but also the performance.
And if you look at the history of VMware, how it started, the whole concept of VMware out of the gate was to present a layer of abstraction to not necessarily make the underlying hardware irrelevant, but that the hardware itself should be somewhat replaceable without even thinking about it if that layer of abstraction with VMware was in place and solid enough. And I think they've taken the same concept with vSAN as it relates to storage. It's now not just a layer of abstraction for the operating systems of the virtual machines themselves, but the storage itself is also abstracted. So you, over time, don't have the necessary moving parts that come with changing vendors as far as storage is concerned, or needing to learn different element managers and things along those lines. Again, heading down the path of standardization, which makes things more efficient.
You know, Jace, insider threat is all over the news. Agencies must concern themselves with efficiency as well as security. What role does vSAN play in protecting data at rest?
So I'm happy to say that as of vSAN 6.6, which we released in April of this year, April of 2017, we did also add a new feature with our enterprise vSAN licensing called vSAN Encryption. It's really our vSAN data encryption at rest feature, if you will. Now, if you look at some of the different encryption strategies out there, we've got some other players in the HCI space and some other players in the traditional space that will leverage what we call self-encrypting drives. And what those essentially protect any organization from is from someone walking out with a drive with data on it. Now, if I, as a rogue virtualization admin, decide that I want to connect to the console and download a powered off VM or a copy of VM and download it to a USB device with self-encrypting drives, it doesn't really protect me much. Now, with vSAN encryption, that VM is encrypted if it's residing on the vSAN data store. We also have another feature called VM encryption, which is specifically per VM. Works a little bit similar, or very similar to vSAN encryption, but similar, and it protects against that USB theft.
We're going to pause here for a short break. My guests today are Donald Poorman, Manager Solutions Architecture GovPlace, Jace McCarty, Staff Technical Marketing Architect VMware. I'm your moderator, John Gilroy, on the discussion, Meeting Government's Data Security Mission, sponsored by GovPlace and VMware on Federal News Radio 1500 AM and federalnewsradio.com.